and your wealth and your servant and your belonging in the world is not going to give you any benefits or zarar or loss. And if you use that and become a kafir, then it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that can only help you. And over in Quran in several different places, it says, "O Prophet, I have sent you to give the humans, the people, the payam, the message, and be a mubashir." In other words, somebody who do tabligh, a mubashir. And you tell them that I'm not asking for anything for myself back. This is all is to give to you so you can choose the path of Allah, the path of Allah, and you make tawakkul. So that's the final ayah tonight. It's saying tawakkul ala al-hayy allazi la yamut. Tawakkul to Allah that is forever. And interestingly enough, again, Maulana was talking about this last night. So this is from the verses of Quran. And you see the payam of Karbala, the message of Karbala, if they had followed the book, then they wouldn't do what they did to the Ahl Bayt. And to its Fajr Karbala should have never happened if they even listened to the ayat of Quran. So inshallah, with that, we continue the Majlis this weekend is belonging to Imam Sajjad Ali ibn al-Hussein, salawatullah alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And as I said before, if we each choose the Quran and read one page of Quran a day, at the end of the year we have 365 pages. And then without a doubt, it would affect your life and your living. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma
salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the love of the Holy Prophet and his holy family, please recite salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the reappearance of our awaited Savior, please recite the third salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The marsiya that I have tonight is about our fourth Imam, Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam. शहीद से कोई शमशीर का मजा पूछे, मरीज से कोई अक्सीर का मजा पूछे, असीर से कोई जंजीर का मजा पूछे, यतीम से कोई दिलगीर का मजा पूछे, हर एक पर गुजरा जमाने में रंजो गम है, सहाना आबिद बीमार सा, सहाना आबिद बीमार सा अलम है। शहीद होते हुए बाप को पिसर देखे, अनीपा नेज़े की है सरे पिदर देखे, जवान भाई का निकला हुआ जिगर देखे, फूफी को आंखों से बलवे में ना, फूफी को आंखों से बलवे में ना गे सर देखे, किसी नबी पे ना इस तरह के अलम गुजरे, जो इस मरीज पर हर तरह के, जो इस मरीज पर हर तरह के सितम गुजरे। सितम के बाद ہوا قید سے جو چھٹکارا، لہیں سے باپ کا سر اس یتیم نے مانگا سر حسین، خزانے سے ہند نے بھیجا سوار اونٹوں پر کنبا ہوا پیمبر کا، لحد میں لاش غریبوں کی ہائے دھرنے چلے، مہ بطول کو پیوند خاک، مہ بطول کو پیوند خاک کرنے چلے۔ لکھا ہے یوں کہ وطن آئے جب شہ والا، پدر کی یاد میں ہر وقت تھے نالا، نظر جو آتا تھا پانی تو روتے تھے مولا، ہمیشہ آنکھوں میں پھرتا تھا دشت کرب و بلا، پدر کے بعد بھی راحت ملی نہ عابد کو، دوبارہ قید کیا اس غریب، دوبارہ قید کیا اس غریب زاہد کو، وطن سے لے گئے پھر قید کر کے بانی شر، ہوئی بھتیجے کے ہمراہ زینب مستر، قریب شام جو پہنچے وہ دونوں نوحاگر، لگایا بیلچہ زینب کی پشت کے اوپر، سفر میں زینب بے کس سے چھٹ گئے سجاد، دیار شام میں پھر آ کے لٹے، دیار شام میں پھر آ کے لٹے گئے سجاد، پھوپھی کو سونپ کے جنگل میں سید والا، مدینے میں ہوا داخل وہ بے کس و تنہا، ولید شام کے حاکم نے زہر بھجوایا، وہ سم کے کھاتے ہی عابد نے کی جہاں سے قضا، فلک بہورو ملک عرش کو ہلانے لگے، زمیں پر جن و بشر سر پہ خاک، زمیں پر جن و بشر سر پہ خاک اڑانے لگے، محب و داغے علم دل پہ دھر گئے سجاد، جو کھایا زہر تو صد حیف مر گئے سجاد، نبی کی آل کو بے آس کر گئے سجاد، یتیم ہو گئے باقر گزر گئے سجاد، سر اپنا پیٹے مرخد سے مصطفیٰ نکلے، کلیجہ تھام کے کیوں کر نفا، کلیجہ تھام کے کیوں کر نفا تیما نکلے، صلوات
محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔ عابد کو جہاں غش آتا ہے، دروں سے جگایا جاتا ہے، عابد کو جہاں غش آتا ہے، دروں سے جگایا جاتا ہے، ایک پھول ہے جس کو کانٹوں پر دن رات چلایا جاتا ہے، عباس کی غیرت سے اکثر عابد کی اسیری پوچھتی ہے، کیا 4 برس کی بہنا کو زندہ میں سلایا جاتا ہے، سادات کے خیمے جلتے ہیں، شولوں میں گھری ہے آل نبی، پھر آج نبی کی بیٹی پر دروازہ گرایا جاتا ہے، رو رو کے شہیدی دیکھتے ہیں، نیزے سے سکینہ کی جانب لگتا ہے پشت ناقہ سے بچی کو گرایا جاتا ہے، بی بی کو قریب لاش جری دروں کی اذیت دیتے ہیں، بی بی کو قریب لاش جری دروں کی اذیت دیتے ہیں، عباس کو تڑپانے کے لیے زینب کو ستایا جاتا ہے، عابد کو جہاں غش آتا ہے دروں سے جگایا جاتا ہے، غیرت کے سبب جس بی بی نے گھر میں بھی نہ دیکھا آئینہ، بے پردہ اسے لانے کے لیے دربار سجایا جاتا ہے، بن بیاہ کے اکبر مارے گئے، ارمان نہ نکلے بانوں کے، تابوت پہ اکبر کے صحرا کچھ یوں بھی چڑھایا جاتا ہے، وہ نو کے سنا پہ غیرت سے رکتا ہی نہیں گر جاتا ہے، جب بھی سرے عباس سے جری نیزے پہ چڑھایا جاتا ہے، عابد کو جہاں غش آتا ہے دروں سے جگایا جاتا ہے، اور محمد علیہ السلام.
A couple of quick announcements and salawat. I have a request. It's a Toyota Camry, Kansas number plate 135EYK. Please, whoever parked this car, they have to move that. It's a non-parking spot. Please move that car from their spot. Again, this Toyota Camry, black color 135EYK. They have to move their car from there. We can be violated for safety reasons. Second, for reminders, inshallah, next week, Majalis will be Maulana Zafar Abbas will be addressing Majalis starting after Maghrib prayer. Majalis will start, inshallah, at 7:14. So remember, Maghrib is coming early, so it'll be a little bit earlier next week. Inshallah, we ask Maulana to come in. Salawat.
رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله بسم الله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فوضوا أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله نور السماوات والأرض صدق الله العلي العظيم زينوا مجالسكم بالصلوات على محمد وآل محمد. For the love of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. And for the hastening of the reappearance of Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Iman, Salamun alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question: what's the proof of the existence of God? Keep that question in the back of your mind. We live in an interesting time, in an interesting era. One where we are constantly telling our next generation to get very educated from a secular perspective. It's a beautiful thing on the one hand. On the one hand, we are encouraging our next generation to become doctors, to become lawyers, to become engineers, to become economists, to become psychologists, to become very educated and especially go into the sciences, what we call the STEM fields: science, technology, engineering, math. On the one hand, this is beautiful. And this aligns directly with the advice of Sayyid Sistani in a letter he wrote to a group of youth who asked him for advice. It's a beautiful letter which I recommend we all read. In this letter, Sayyid Sistani, in one of the points, he says that try to specialize as much as possible if you can. Try to go into a field and try to become the best in whatever field that you pursue. So for example, if you go into economics, try to become the best economist. If you go into medicine, become the best doctor or physician or researcher. Or if you go into whatever field you choose, try to become the best and try to specialize. Furthermore, he says that if possible, don't just absorb knowledge from the books, contribute to the books. Meaning that why is it that you study and you benefit from the textbooks written by other people, the research papers written by others? Why do you not also contribute? If you are contributing, writing research articles, writing textbooks, this is beautiful. But at the same time, if you are simply absorbing, you should figure out a way to not only benefit from, but also contribute to. So these are all part and parcel of the beautiful aspects of our society and our civilization. But there's another aspect to it. In our world, we live in a world where there are side effects to things, whether we realize them or whether we don't. And this is a theme that I try to build on. If I take a medication, the doctor will tell me, the physician will tell me, the pharmacist will tell me that make sure that you take this and make sure you're not taking this other medicine with it, for example. Or they'll say that this can have certain side effects. What side effects? It can, for example, give you, for example, dry mouth. It can give you a headache. It can cause you fatigue. It can cause you several other factors. This happens on a physical level. This also happens on a psychological level. Whether you and I realize it or not, our environment has a tremendous impact on us. What do I mean? Those people who are born and raised in a society and lived in a society where Islam is dominant, for example, or Islam or Muslims are in a vast majority, although they're a minority. For example, India. Although The majority are Hindus. They're not Muslims, they're a majority. But still, there's a sizable population of Muslims, maybe 250 million plus. In Pakistan, in Iran, in Afghanistan, Muslim majority countries, Iraq, for example. There is a certain drift, there is a certain culture in those environments that exists. There's a certain culture that exists in these environments where we live, in America, in Canada, in the UK. This environment, sometimes it has a positive impact, sometimes it has a negative impact. It has pros and cons. Therefore, the question that I'm trying to look at and address tonight is the question that is fundamental and foundational to many of our lives and also the lives of our future generations. Because on the one hand, we are finding that we are telling our next generation, become educated, go to university, get a good degree. I'm part of this wave myself. I'm not telling anyone to not do it. I highly encourage it in light of what our scholars have said. But at the same time, we're finding, and I'm telling you this based on my travels in the US, Canada, Europe, throughout the globe, especially in the West. We are encouraging our next generation to become doctors, for example, to become engineers. When you go to the university environment, that university also has an environment. And sometimes that environment may be in favor of our faith, maybe it may not be. And sometimes, to exacerbate the problem further, academia is beautiful. That 5-mile radius around the university is not the most beautiful. Who knows what's going on there? I know, I've been through it. I know what's going on there. Our children, our youth, our next generation, they are swimming in the same ocean with everyone else. Don't you think there will be an impact of that ocean upon the individual? We need to give fundamental answers to the big questions of life. If I give a dalil from the Quran, or if I give a dalil from the hadith to someone who has grown up here, that hadith, that even Quran may not have the impact that I want it to have if that person doesn't have confidence in the Quran and the hadith. If that person is not convinced on the legitimacy and the authenticity of the word and the hadith, then what benefit will it have for them? Therefore, I must come forward with proof and evidence that is not only accepted by the Muslim, it is not only accepted by the Shia, it must be accepted universally. Therefore, I must come with proof and evidence that the logic accepts. Therefore, I want to look at the question of the existence of God tonight. Because if someone is shaky on this matter, if they are shaky on this matter, then everything else begins to shake. If I want to come build a building, if I come forward and build a building, the first fundamental element of construction in civil engineering is I must make sure that the foundation of the building is strong. If the foundation is not strong, the building has no hope of being strong. But if the foundation is strong, I have some hope that the building will stand the test of time. The building may stay there for hundreds of years after I'm gone. But foundational element, this is why Usuluddin was so important in Islam. Tawheed, Adala, Nabuwa, Imama, Qiyama. These things are fundamental, and I've said it before and I'll repeat it again. These are things that you and I cannot do taqleed in. It's haram. I cannot say that I do taqleed of Ayatollah Sistani or Ayatollah Khamenei or Ayatollah XYZ in the Usul Uddin. I can do it in furu. Those matters of namaz, roza, hajj, zakat, khums, prayer, salat, som, those matters. Tawalla, tabara, nahi amr bil ma'ruf, nahi anil munkar. Those things I can do it. That's fine. But with respect to why I believe and what I believe and why I believe it, I must have my own proof and evidence. I must be able to legitimately, logically deduce and prove that there is one God. I must be able to prove His adala, His justice. I must be able to prove the concept of nubuwa, the concept of imama, and the concept of the Yawm al-Qiyamah, the day of judgment. Therefore, I want to look at this question so we can give an answer to this generation and the next generation with respect to the existence of God. Number one, I want to look at what have philosophers said on this question. What have scientists said about this question? Is it true that most scientists throughout history have been atheists, they have not believed? Or is this a fallacy? I want to look at what is one of the biggest factors that led one of the biggest atheists to perhaps change their mind. I want to look at what the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have looked at on this issue and how they have addressed it. And I want to look at what was Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam's relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how he was trying to waken up the nation with respect to their importance and their obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how Imam Sajjad alayhi salam carried this message after Karbala. This is our schedule for the night. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If we look at the manhaj, the school of thought of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, the school of thought of the A'imma, one may argue whether it is the topic of the Quran al-Majid, or it is what the Ahlul Bayt constantly reminded us about. The theme, according to many scholars, if you want to condense the theme of the Quran in one word, the argument from the scholars come forward that the theme of the Quran is Tawheed. Belief in one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of the prophets, from Adam to Khatam to Rasul al-Azam, were trying to get mankind to realize that there is a creator here who is greater than you. And this creator has created this entire universe. And furthermore, when it was with respect to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, they never tried to convince people of their own personality for themselves, for their own sake. They were always trying to get people to the ultimate goal, which was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They wanted people to accept their guidance only so that they could get to Allah. The Ahlul Bayt take our hand, they hold our hand and take us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why we follow the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Their personality, they are the closest in proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of their ma'rifah. What do I mean proximity? Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have physical space? Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, Inni muhajirun ila Rabbi. He says, I am someone who is a muhajir, who is migrating towards my Lord. Ibrahim, where is your Lord? Not that you are migrating towards him. Meaning, I migrate in physical time and space. I go from one place to another. I migrate. I move from one physical entity to another. For example, I go from Kansas City to St. Louis. I move from one space and time to another space and time. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if Ibrahim alayhi salam is saying, Inni muhajirun ila Rabbi, I am moving closer to my Lord. Ibrahim, where is your Lord? Not. He is here. He is here. He is in Kansas City. He's in St. Louis. He's in Karbala. He's in Najaf. He's in China. He's everywhere. The answer comes back. It is not a physical migration. It is a spiritual migration. He says, I am moving closer in spiritual proximity, in ma'rifah to my creator. The Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam were the same. They were moving in closer proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, this issue is fundamental. Christian philosophers, Jewish philosophers, and of course Islamic philosophers have looked at this question in depth. With respect to the existence of God, the Aristotelian argument that is taught in the Hawza is as follows, as to how one can give a physical proof, a philosophical proof of the existence of God. The argument goes, we live in a world where we exist because if you ask, how am I here today? One will respond, please bear with me on this very delicate issue. If I exist today, one may argue, how did you come here? I was here because I was here yesterday. Well, how did you get here from yesterday? Well, I was there the day before yesterday. And then you begin to go back. You begin to regress up until the point that you get to a infinite regression. What does infinite regression mean? Imagine for a moment in time that I line up dominoes, not the pizza place, dominoes. You know the little pieces that people used to play with, they probably play with. I still don't know how to play the game, by the way. Nonetheless, you take dominoes and you line them up. If you are inclined, you can use Legos. And you line up these similar pieces of Legos in a line. And they go continuously, forever. They're going and going and going. And they're lined up in a way that if I tip one of them, it hits the next one, and the next one, and the next one, up until the point that it falls all the way down. But I want to go back and see what was the first impact that led that first domino to fall. What was the first thing that let the first Lego drop? We understand that today the Legos are dropping, meaning our world is continuing. But if I go back to the beginning, where was the first Lego that dropped? Where was the first domino that was pushed over that caused this reaction? Number one, we understand that we go back. We cannot go back to infinity without having a starting point. Now, point number one. Point number two, whatever caused that first movement, whatever initiated the first movement, that thing, that entity cannot be bound by time and space. Because if it is bound by time and space, it is part of that same domino set. It is another domino in the chain. Therefore, whatever it is that caused that first movement, it must have not been bound by time and space. What do I mean time and space? Zaman and makan. If you want to have a majlis, you have to have a flyer or a notification. You tell the mu'mineen that there's a majlis. The first thing they will ask you, what's the time and the place? What's the zaman and what's the makan? What's the time? What time will it be? And where's the address? The same way, our world is what's bound by what's called the time and space continuum. That means that first, there is this domino effect that is going on till today. But the first cause of that must have been something that is not bound by time and space. It cannot have a physical length, width, height, and it cannot have a weight. And it cannot not be bound by these things. Otherwise, it's just another domino in the chain. That initial cause that caused that domino to fall, if you look at the diagram of the Big Bang Theory, the drawing of it, the diagram, the Big Bang Theory, which happened roughly 14 billion years ago, that theory, if you look at the diagram, there's a point where time begins. That is the beginning of what we call time and space. That is where the domino effect starts. You and I, we believe that initial cause is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Somebody may argue it's something else. But from a philosophical standpoint, this is the answer that comes forward. By the way, as a side note, many people say, is the Big Bang Theory in favor of Islam? Is it against Islam? Is it in favor of religion? Is it against religion? The founder of the Big Bang Theory was who? It was a man by the name of Lemaitre. He was a physicist, a physicist. Do you know what he did otherwise? Besides being a physicist, do you know what he was full-time? He was full-time physicist. He was also a priest. You can see his pictures online. He's wearing the full garb with the cross. He didn't think that his theory had anything against religion. In fact, it strengthened his belief to show that there is somebody who created this universe. I believe his words or his view. Therefore, the first aspect is the initial mover, or the Aristotelian argument of infinite regression cannot be possible. Therefore, there must be an initial cause. This is the first one. This may be philosophically dense, but it is one of the strongest arguments. Number two, with respect to proving the existence of God, if you ask an atheist, a person who does not believe in God, what is the most difficult question for them to answer with respect to the existence of God? What response will they give you? They will tell you the most difficult thing for us to answer with respect to the existence of God is the fine-tuning argument. That is, when you look at the universe, when you look at our world, everything seems to be designed and everything seems to be set in such a way that it would not happen by accident. Allow me to explain. One of the strong proofs, or one of the arguments from a scientific perspective for the existence of God, is the second law of thermodynamics. It's a very fancy word. I'll simplify. It's a very easy concept. The second law of thermodynamics says the entropy of the universe is increasing. The entropy of the universe is increasing. Entropy is what? Entropy is a fancy word for chaos. Chaos or disorder. Meaning, what does that mean? Think about this for one moment with me. Imagine for a moment that there are a series of Lego blocks and they're all put together nicely, neatly stacked. And then I take one piece away from the Lego block and I toss it away. And another piece, and another piece, and another piece. And I begin to take the pieces away and they begin to move and scattered in different places. This is one example, number one. Number two, imagine for a moment I take a bunch of pens in my hand or pencils and I throw them in the air. If I throw these pens in the air, will they stack neatly on the ground in a very perfect square? I would not expect that to happen, right? I would expect them to go everywhere and clutter. The second law of thermodynamics says the chaos of our universe is increasing. The disorder, the entropy is increasing. Meaning what? This implies what? This implies that there must have been something that organized everything in the first place. Because I'm going from a state of order to a state of disorder. And order does not exist by accident in our world. Meaning, if two cars collide on the highway, there's an accident. I don't expect two particles or two cars to collide and then everything becomes very organized. It doesn't happen that way. We go from a state of order to disorder. If we go from order to disorder, that means there must have been something that caused order in the first place. Second point. Third point, very important. Please keep the next two in particular in mind. I'm getting to a very important conclusion. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Stephen Hawking, you may be familiar with the name. He's a very famous physicist who passed away a couple of years ago. Stephen Hawking wrote in his book, The Brief History of Time, A Brief History of Time, he said the example of our universe coming out of nowhere. You see, these discussions are extremely important. If we're telling our next generation, become doctors, become lawyers, become engineers, become economists, that's wonderful. But if I tell my son, or I tell my daughter to become a doctor, and they're going to med school, or they're having professors who don't believe in God, that is going to have an impact on them. They must have answers to these questions. I tell you with my hand on heart, I've seen people, parents who said, we're sending our son to med school, or our daughter to med school. 4 years undergrad, 4 years med school, 3 years residency at the minimum. 11 years later, come back, I don't believe in this faith. Because they may have been somewhere, not always, it happens though. I know this personally. I've been trying to help bring people back. You go to a remote town, you go to a place where there's no community, for example, you're not regularly attending. 11 years is a long time. It leads you to think it otherwise. You start saying, well, why do I have to come to the masjid? Why do I have to come to the Husseiniya? Why do I have to come to Imam Barga? You know, first of all, a lot of this is fairy tales. That's the response I've heard. If we don't give answers to these big questions, where are we going to have our next generation maybe wanting to say that, what's the point of all this? If you remember, I may have shared this with you. Never forget this statement. The second generation of Jewish immigrants that came to this country, after they had built their huge synagogues, massive palace-like synagogues, they had a statement. They said that these synagogues are heavy on sweat and light on tears. What did they mean? They said that we spent so much money, so much time, so much resources on building these synagogues, but there's nobody here on the Sabbath praying or crying. There's no spirituality. There's nobody in attendance. We must learn from the history of other people. Amir al-Mu'mineen tells his son in his wasiyah and his letter to his son, his will to his son. He says, my son, study history because history is bound to repeat itself. The Imam says, I studied. Amir al-Mu'mineen has divine knowledge. Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying, I studied history. He's telling his son, Muhammad Hanafiya, I studied history up until the point that it was as if I was walking amongst the ruins of past civilizations. You know that archaeologists walk around amongst the ruins of civilizations. Amir al-Mu'mineen says that I was walking amongst their ruins to that point. There's a book, if you're inclined, it's called Generations. It talks about every 80 to 90 years, our world, the history of our world repeats itself. If you understand the cycles of history, you can then start to predict the future. 1 or 2 years off, you'll begin to understand. Therefore, I'm saying we need to take heed. We need to make sure that our next generation, they are highly intellectual, they're doctors, lawyers, and engineers on one hand, but they also have ma'arifah and belief in the Ahlul Bayt and Islam. They have belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hand in hand. Physical infrastructure and spiritual infrastructure. Keeping all this in mind, I'm getting to the next point. Stephen Hawking, in A Brief History of Time, he says when he's talking about the example of how this universe came into existence, he says the example, if I can give you, he crunched all the numbers, he gave all the statistics, he gave all the data, but he said this data may not mean much for you. I need to give it in context. Let me give you an example. He says the example of the universe coming into existence by accident or by happening by chance is as follows. He says, imagine putting a group of, for example, monkeys into a room. You put these monkeys into a room. When you put them into a room, they begin to, and you put a typewriter in the room. You don't know what a typewriter is? Somebody, a keyboard if you don't remember what a typewriter is. So you put these individuals into a room, and then you have a typewriter or a keyboard in the room, and you leave it there. And he says, furthermore, imagine that they begin to type, and they begin to type on this keyboard. And eventually, these monkeys who don't understand the English language, they eventually not create words, create sentences, not create paragraphs. Eventually, they create the sonnets and the poetry of Shakespeare. He said that's the example. This is what Stephen Hawking says. That's how our universe came into existence. If you want an example of what's the probability and how it happened. There was another physicist by the name of Schroeder. Schroeder read A Brief History of Time, and he said, very interesting, Mr. Hawking. I am very fascinated by your analogy. And he said, it's very interesting. The British Council of Art has actually done this study. They put a group of monkeys into a room, and they put a typewriter into the room. And they left them there for 1 month. The researchers say this, not me. The researchers say that the monkeys were in the room, they put a typewriter in the room. For the first few days, the monkeys did not go even close to the typewriter. After a few days, they began to go near it, and their words, not mine, they began to use the typewriter as a toilet. They didn't know what else to do with it. And after some time, they began to type one word after. They began to tap on the buttons on the keyboard. Now, mind you, what is the shortest word in the English language? A or I? Ahsantum. A or I? A, ahsant. I, mashallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. MashaAllah, it's a very smart community, alhamdulillah. You have very excellent institutions here, alhamdulillah. UMKC and the others, like MashaAllah. So he says the shortest letter in the entire English language is A and I. But there's a requirement. Before the A and I, there must be a space before and a space after. Otherwise, it doesn't count as a word. Space before, space after. Then it becomes A or I, that counts as a word. Keep this in mind. The researchers, after 1 month, the monkeys produced 50 pages worth of content. Tapping away. After 50 days, or after 30 days, 50 pages, the researchers found that those monkeys had not produced a single word in the English language. Every single thing was gibberish. There was no A or I without a space. You could not find it. Keep this in mind on one end. Furthermore, in mathematics, there's a value called statistical zero. If you have your phones or you have a piece of paper, it may help to write the following down. 1 over 10 to the 50th power. This is called statistical zero. An easier way is 0.0 followed by 50 zeros. 50 zeros and then a 1. This is known as statistical zero. Statistical zero is that value that if you find this value, it's as if the value is 0. You can essentially say it's 0. Professor Schroeder, who read Stephen Hawking's book, he began to crunch the numbers. He said, you are saying the example of our universe happening by chance is as if these monkeys began to type and they produced not words, not sentences, not paragraphs, but the poetry of Shakespeare. He said, let's crunch the numbers. He said, let me take one of the sonnets of Shakespeare. He said, he took the one, shall I compare thee to a summer? That's the one he took. He said 14 lines. How many words are in this? He began to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. He found there were 480 words in that poem of Shakespeare. He said, okay, 488. How many letters are in the English language? He's counted 1, 2, 3, 26. He said the probability of this poem happening by the monkeys is 26 raised to the 488th power. If you convert 26 raised to the 488th power for each word in the poem, that becomes in base 10 raised to the 690th power. So now take 1, put it over 10 to the 690th. That's 0.0 followed by 690 zeros. That's the probability, Schroeder says, that's the probability of our universe happening by chance. What's the problem with this? I already shared with you statistical zero is 0.0 followed by 50 zeros. 0.0 followed by 690 zeros. How small is that number? Let me put that in perspective. Do you know how small that number is? Do you know how many seconds have elapsed since the Big Bang theory? Since the Big Bang happened 14 billion years ago. How many seconds? 10 raised to the 18th. 10 raised to the 1/8. That's how many seconds have elapsed since the Big Bang occurred. That number, 10, 1 over 10 raised to the 690th power. That number is so small that no scientist worth their weight would ever put their money on that. If you asked a scientist to bet on what's the probability of the universe coming by chance, no scientist who's worth their weight would say that I am willing to bet on that probability. Therefore, we have been sold this fallacy. This is argument number one. The other fallacy that we have been told is that most scientists that have lived in our world have been atheists. This is not true. Einstein, NPR did a study, which individual will be remembered in our world 1,000 years on? The number one person on the list was Einstein. Einstein said that God is not playing dice with the universe. God is not, this world is not happening by chance. Furthermore, Isaac Newton wrote extensively, never forget it, Newtonian mechanics. Isaac Newton wrote extensively on physics and science and math and calculus, one of the inventors of calculus. But he also, what they don't tell you about is, he wrote extensively about God. He believed in God. He was an adamant mawahid, to the point that at that time, he was at Cambridge University. At Cambridge University in the UK, you had to be ordained as a priest in order to be a professor. He says, I do not believe in the Trinity, because Jesus never said there were three. Jesus said that the Father in the heavens is greater than I, referring to God. He said that God is only one. He got special exemption in order to teach at Cambridge. Furthermore, Descartes. You remember we talked about the XY plane yesterday? That plane is called the Cartesian plane. It is named after René Descartes, who's one of the biggest philosophers and also mathematicians of his time. He believed adamantly in God. Who else? Francis Bacon, the founder of the scientific method. Numerous scientists throughout history have always believed in God. But the drift of our society today, the ocean and the water in which our youth live, this world, in our modern world, if I want to be a professor at an institution, it's much safer for me to be an atheist than to believe in God. It's much safer. If I want to be a professor of biology, I go to UMKC, I go to UK, I go to KU or whatever institution. And for example, if I'm somebody who's very outspoken about being a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, do you think that's going to be easier for me to get that job, or is it easier if I'm an atheist? It's 10 times easier if I'm an atheist to get that job. Why? Do you not think this has an impact? Number one, Schroeder's response to Stephen Hawking. Don't forget this. Now I want to share something with you. What the media doesn't tell you many times. You need to be very careful about the knowledge and information you get. In my travels, I've talked to a lot of, for example, physicians, and they'll tell me that, the media is very interesting. There will be one study that may say that alcohol may have some benefits for you. One study, and that's all over the news. It's all over the press. They won't tell you, for example, that you can drink grape juice and get the same benefit, by the way, or eat grapes and get the same benefit. They won't tell you that part. But they won't also tell you, this is what they tell me, they also won't tell you that there's 2,000 other studies that are telling you about the harmful effects of alcohol on your body. Nobody says that. But it sells in the press to say that maybe drinking a little bit of alcohol is helpful. This is something the society and media doesn't tell you and I about. Sociologists have looked at the news, and the news is important at some level. We need people in media, by the way. It's very important. But media is also one of the things that makes us more depressed and anxious. Why? Because news shares the anomalies of civilization. It shares the outliers. It shares not the everyday occurrences. It shares that person who was a criminal or something like this. So it makes you fear your neighbors. So you think that this is the norm of society. It's not. This is what I wanted to mention. One individual that the media does not tell us about is the person who was the king of atheists, the biggest atheist of the last 100 years, Antony Flew. Antony Flew was one of the greatest philosophers of England that England produced. He was one of the individuals that because of him, people said they are atheists because of him. Antony Flew, before he died, just a few years before he died, he changed his mind. Antony Flew said, I now believe in God. They said, why? Why? You are the reason that we changed our entire belief system. You are the reason we changed our entire belief system. People, atheists said, we are atheists because of you. He said, two things changed my mind. The second one more than the first. He said, what? He said, first reason was Schroeder's response to Stephen Hawking. The response I just gave you, Schroeder's response convinced me that there must be, this universe cannot exist by chance. It's absurd. Schroeder's response was number one. Number two, what was number two? Do you remember? 3 letters. Deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. He said, what? DNA? What? He said, DNA does not allow me to deny the existence of God. He said, why? He said, do you know how much information is encoded in DNA? Adenine, guanine, cytosine, you know this thing? These base pairs that are encoded in DNA that give us our genetic makeup, they give us our hair, skin color, our genetics, our behavior, all of these aspects that are encoded. He said, do you know how much information? By the way, do you know how much information is? He said, I will sum it up. We don't have that much data in our entire world. That's how much information is encoded in each of our genetic code. We're not scheduled to hit that number until 2025, 6 years out, with the flood of data science that's coming. Otherwise, we'd be years out. He says that that information is encoded. Please inscribe this response on your hearts. I don't ever want to hear any of our next generation come forward and say that I don't believe in God. Antony Flew changed his mind. He said, why? DNA. He said that information is programmed. Whenever you see something that is programmed, know there's a programmer. It changed his entire perspective. And he wrote a book, There Is a God. And you can find it on Google. It'll say, there is a God, and the no is crossed out. But this is all for others. For you and I, as followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, enough is the proof of the existence of God, is the existence of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Hussein alayhi salam is enough to prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam are enough to prove the existence of God. Amir al-Mu'mineen, our first Imam, was asked, what is the proof of the existence of God? He says that the animals that walk by, their traces leave evidence. The humans, their steps in the sand, they tell you that something passed by here. Somebody was here before. He says, does this universe not leave signs for you? This universe, doesn't it leave signs when you look at the heavens and the earth, when you look at the ground, when you look at the seas? Does that not make you think that there is someone or something that has created this world and this universe? Number one. Number two, Amir al-Mu'mineen was once asked, atheist came to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he said, Ya Ali, you believe in Allah, you follow all the obligations of Islam, you pray, you do everything. What if you die and tomorrow there is no heaven, there's no hell, there's no hisab, there's no kitab, there's no accountability? Then what? Amir al-Mu'mineen looked right back at him and he said, if I die in that state and there's nothing tomorrow, I will still be happy with my life. I didn't cheat anyone, I didn't lie to anyone, I didn't steal from anyone, I lived a good life. But then he looked right back at him and he said, what if you die tomorrow and there is hisab, there is kitab, there is akhirah, there is heaven, there is hell, and you lived a life where you assumed there wasn't? What will you do? He didn't have an answer. He was perplexed. This, by the way, is what they call Pascal's wager. It's the first example of decision theory. Blaise Pascal is the person who invented the calculator, not the modern form, the original form of it. Pascal, in his wager, he said, if man has to choose between living an existence where he assumes there is God and there is a hereafter, or there is not, he is much better off assuming there is a hereafter. Furthermore, we're told there's an amount of time an atheist. Atheists, by the way, are not new. They've been around a long time. An atheist came to our sixth Imam, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He said, I don't believe. He said, how do you prove God? Prove the existence of God. Give me evidence. I want evidence. The Imam knew that he was a sailor. He's a man who used to go with ships. He said, have you ever been at sea? And at sea, the currents and the waves and the tides have begun to overtake your ship, overtake your vessel. When they began to overtake your vessel, did you ever think there was a point in time that you weren't going to make it, but you still had some hope in your heart that maybe something will calm the tides and something will get me to shore? Did you ever have that feeling? Did you ever have that thought cross your mind? He said, yes. He said, that thought is God. That hope that you have, that is God. Furthermore, we're told there's a moment in time where there's two atheists who are sitting in the vicinity of the Kaaba. Again, I'm telling you, atheists is not a new phenomenon. It's been around a long time. They're sitting in the vicinity of the Kaaba. Ibn Abi Mughaffa, that's the atheist's name. He says to his companion next to him, he says, all of these people here who are going around the Kaaba, who are doing tawaf, they're all animals, except that one right there. Points to the elderly man. It was Imam al-Sadiq. He said, everyone here, they're all animals. That one's different. He says, what's different about him? He says that he has something about him that no one else does. He says, give me proof. I want evidence. He says, very well. He says, it happened the other day. One time, there were people going around the Kaaba, and this man, the Imam of the Shi'as, was there as well. I didn't say anything to him. Ibn Abi Mughaffa says, I didn't say anything to him. He looked at me. And he says that what they believe and what you believe is not the same. Even atheists at that time, many of them were in taqiyya. They didn't clearly say they were atheists. He says, I believe what they believe. They believe what I believe. We believe the same thing. He says, no way. He says, Ibn Abi Mughaffa told him, I didn't say anything. He looked at me and he said it directly to me. He says, it's not the same, that what they say and what you say. He says, what do you mean? I asked the elderly man. Ibn Abi Mughaffa says, he asked the Imam. He says, if what they say is true, the people who are doing tawaf around the Kaaba, if what they say is true and they die and you die, then you are at loss and they are at gain. And if what you say is true, that is, there is no God, there is no nothing after life, then you and them are the same. At that point in time, another form of Pascal's wager. The Imam said the same thing. He said, Yabna Rasulullah, how did you know? At that point, the Imam had clarified to him, what is the existence? What is the difference? You must live a life in which it is much better for you, probabilistically, to live a fair, just, equal life. Furthermore, a man comes to our sixth Imam and he begins to ask the Imam, Abu Shakir is his name. Abu Shakir says, Yabna Rasulullah, what's the proof and existence of God? At that time, there was a young child passing by. The young child had an egg in his hand. The Imam asked for the egg from the child. He took the egg. The Imam held it up in his hand. He said, Abu Shakir, what if I told you that there was a fortress with a shell, with a hard coating, a fortress, a qila, there was a fortress, a fort. What if I told you there was a fort with a hard shell, and inside it was an envelope of a thin film, and inside of it was molten silver, and inside of that was molten gold, molten meaning melted. And what if I told you that the molten gold, the melted gold, would not mix with the melted silver? And yet everything inside is protected. And Abu Shakir, what if I told you nobody went inside it and nobody came out of it? And yet there was nobody to tell me what is the gender of what's going to come from out of it. And one day there will come out of it a creature This creature will not only have feathers, this creature will not only have wings, this creature will not only have legs, this creature will not only have nostrils, it will not only have a mouth, it will have everything that one could imagine. Yet there was no one to come and design it. He began to reflect on this idea. He said, verily, I believe that there is no God but Allah and you are His representative on earth. The truth sets you free. Our eighth Imam was once asked, Imam al-Rida alayhi salam was once asked, said, Yabna Rasulillah, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create so many different types of creation? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create so many different types of birds, so many different types of plants, so many different types of fish? You know, there are people, for example, Jeff Bezos, for example, Elon Musk, they're saying, let's go to Mars. Let's go and see the other space, other planetary bodies. There's other people like Ray Dalio, is the most successful hedge fund manager in the world. He says, we should go to the sea and see what's in the sea. There is an entire universe in the sea that we have no idea about. You know the Amazon that was on fire? That Amazon, there are new species being discovered every single day that we don't know about. All of this complexity. The companion asked, he said, Yabna Rasulullah, he asked the eighth Imam, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create so many different types of creation? The response the Imam gave was amazing. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created so many different types of creation so that nobody can come forward and say that I thought of a creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not think of. That you and I, we don't know what all exists. We don't know what's in the ocean. We don't know what's in the heavens. We don't know what's in the birds. Every day we're discovering something new. And everything that the mind can conceive is either already there or will be discovered at some point in time. Therefore, the takeaway message of tonight is the answers to the big questions of life exist. It's our job to make time to find these answers. I don't want anyone to come forward and say, I have this question and therefore I've not gotten an answer to it, therefore I don't believe. We must make time. The existence of God, there is proof and evidence about the existence of God. Why we need religion, there's proof and evidence of that. Inshallah, another time, if life permits, I will tell you exactly why we need religion in the 21st century. All of these questions have answers. But for you and I, you don't need to go further than the words of Aba Abdullah, our third Imam, on the plains of Arafah. Dua Arafah. Amazing dua of our Imam. That he gave, by the way, extemporaneously. Fil badi, as they say. He said off the cuff. It was not something that he planned or said. He just stood on the plains of Arafah and he began to recite this dua. He says, my Lord. And he begins to say, my Lord, by my nose, by the nostrils of my nose, by the matrices of my teeth, by the jaw that connects from the socket to the mouth, by the aorta, by the esophagus, by my eyes, by my rib cage. It's as if he's giving a complete anatomy lesson on the human body. He's saying all of this is proof and evidence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence. Why else would anyone go on the plains of Karbala and have that much trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? One statement of Aba Abdullah on Yawm Ashura proves the existence of God to you and I. He says, Ilahi, Aba Abdullah on the plains of Karbala. In his last moments, he says, Ilahi, qad wafaita ufu bi'ahdik. Ilahi, qad wafaita ufu bi'ahdik. He says, my Lord, my Creator, I have fulfilled my promise. Now you do your job. Allahu Akbar. The trust of Imam al-Hussein in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, my Lord, my Creator, I have orphaned my children for you. Allahu Akbar. For you and I, Aba Abdullah is enough to prove the existence of God. Allahu Akbar. This Imam and his son, what they gave to us, we can never imagine, we can never fathom the level that this Imam, the gift that these Imams have given to you and I. Their love is the most precious thing that we possess. Never become negligent of that. Never undermine the love of the Ahlul Bayt. It's the most valuable thing that we possess. These are the nights of Imam Sajjad. Do you know what difficulties, what calamities Imam Sajjad went through after Karbala? After Kufa, they asked the Imam, when he got back to Medina, they said, Yabna Rasulillah, where did you have the difficulty? Where did you have the most travesty? Was it in Karbala? What was the biggest tragedy that you faced? He began to say, Asham, Asham, Asham. He said, Sham, in that place, we were ridiculed, we were humiliated. One companion, he came to the Imam. He said, Yabna Rasulillah, that isn't it fair? You've been crying for so long. Why do you continue to cry in this way? Isn't shahadat, isn't martyrdom part and parcel of your family? Isn't this something that you have inherited? Wasn't your father martyred? Wasn't your grandfather martyred? Wasn't your uncle Hassan al-Mujtaba martyred? Weren't the Ahlul Bayt martyred? Why is it that you cry? Minhal said this. He began to cry. The Imam began to cry. He looked back at Minhal. He said, Minhal, you are absolutely right. Our father was martyred. My grandfather was martyred. My uncle was martyred. This is part of our family. But tell me, Minhal, be fair. Is seeing my aunt and my sisters without hijab, is that something that is part of our inheritance? Minhal, do you know what went through my heart? There was a moment in time, we're told, in Sham, when in Sham they put all of the heads on spears of the shuhada. When they put all of the heads on the spears, do you know what the Imam went through? We cannot fathom what the Imam went through. They put all of the heads of the shuhada on the spears. The ulama say there was one head that was on the spear. There was one lady who was staring at the face of this head that was on the spear. She was staring at only this face. We're told after some time, a lady from the family of the Ahlul Bayt, she came to the lady. She said, can I ask you a question? She said, what's your question? She said, why are you looking at this face? And you have been looking at this face for a very long time. She looked at the face and she says, I'm staring at this face because this is the most beautiful face that I've ever seen in my life. I have one wish in my heart. She says, what's the wish that you have in your heart? I wish and I pray that when this youth was killed, his mother was not alive to see the day. Layla began to weep. She said, that's my son Ali Akbar. I saw him as he was being butchered on the plains of Karbala. Imam Sajjad saw these difficulties. He saw these calamities. There was another moment. Do you know what went through Imam Sajjad's heart? They say for 3 days, they kept the family of Imam al-Hussein in the bazaar of Sham. Do you know why? Do you know what they did? They lined up mirrors across the streets. Why? Because they wanted to humiliate Ali Muhammad so that they see their reflection in humiliation. For 3 days, they kept them waiting outside so that they would set the darbar of Sham. There's a moment in time where Sayyida Zainab is ordered to go into the darbar of Sham. She says, I will not go into the darbar of Sham. I will not go into the bazaar of Sham. I will not go into Yazid's darbar. Imam Sajjad says, my aunt Zainab, go into the bazaar. If Bibi Zainab, she's reluctant, she's not wanting to go. Imam Sajjad says, my aunt Zainab, look at the head of my father on the spear. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he says to Sayyida Zainab, my sister Zainab, go. It was as if Sayyida Zainab entered into the court. It was as if she had said, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Our ulama, they said one statement is enough to break the back of the Imam. What's the statement? That Sayyida Zainab entered into the court of a drunkard, Yazid ibn Muawiyah. Sayyida Zainab entered into the court of a drunkard, Yazid ibn Muawiyah, ajrukum ala Allah. The calamity of Imam Sajjad did not stop there. Imam Sajjad, there were moments when they were in the zindan, in the prison of Sham. We're told that Bibi Sakina used to cry a lot. When Bibi Sakina used to cry a lot, they would say, Sajjad, make your sister Sakina quiet. She would begin to cry. Do you know what they would do? They they would say that we are putting this child in solitary confinement. We are putting this child in isolation. Imam Sajjad would take Bibi Sakina and they would say, take her to this room. He would put her down and the lion would say that now you shall leave, we'll close this door. Allah knows what went through the heart of Imam Sajjad, how he put his sister down on the ground. Ajrukum ala Allah. Allah knows how he turned around and left. And this Imam, he was entrusted with the responsibility of a few days later burying this 4-year-old daughter of Imam al-Hussein into the ground. May Allah never show anyone the day that they have to put their 4-year-old sister into the ground. Ajrukum ala Allah. Ajrukum ala Allah. Final direction we are told on Yawm Ashura. Ajrukum ala Allah. May Allah bless you and may Allah bless these tears. These tears on Yawm al-Qiyamah will be a witness for you. Our ulama, whether it was Ayatollah Bashir Najafi, whether it is our Ayatollah Maraji of current or the past ulama, they have said that these tears have a particular karama and they have requested that they are buried with it when they die. Ayatollah Najafi Marashi, in his wasiyah, he told his son, bury me with my handkerchief that I used to cry on the musibah of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. They are told on Yawm Ashura, when Imam al-Hussein came into the tent for the akhiri salam, the final salam, he was riddled with arrows, he was bleeding from every side. At that moment, Imam Sajjad looked at his father. He said, what has happened to you, my father? He said, Aina Ammi Abbas. He says, where is my uncle Abu Fadl al-Abbas? How did this happen to you? At that moment in time, he began to weep. The Imam said, my son, there is no one left in the men except you and I. Qad qutil. They have killed Abu Fadl al-Abbas. They've killed Ali Akbar. They have killed everyone. Ajrukum ala Allah. This tragedy of Abu Fadl al-Abbas being killed broke the heart of Imam Sajjad. Do you know what was the calamity of Abu Fadl? Abu Fadl al-Abbas, 300 years ago, Sayyid Mahdi Bahar al-Ulum, Marja A'lam, he had taken some of the Zaireen into the grave of Hazrat Abu Fadl al-Abbas. When he took them to the grave of Abu Fadl al-Abbas, all the people who were with him, they looked at the grave and they looked at Sayyid Mahdi. They said, Sayyid Mahdi, we have a question, we can't answer. He says, what's the question? He says that we heard that Abu Fadl al-Abbas was very tall. He was very big. Why is his grave so small? Agha began to beat himself. He began to cry. He said, yes, Abu Fadl al-Abbas, Qamru Bani Hashim, he was very tall. He was very strong. But the lion cut him into so many pieces that this is all that we have left of him. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك يا أمير المؤمنين صلى الله عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين صلى الله عليك يا حسن المجتبى السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين خصوصا سيدي ومولاي أبو الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين معتم حسين يا حسين يا حسين.
बरपा ऐ आबिद मुज़तर एक शोर क़यामत का मदीने में है बरपा ऐ आबिद मुज़तर जालिम ने तुम्हें जहर से मारा मेरे मौला जालिम ने तुम्हें जहर से मारा मेरे मौला اے عابد مضطر، ماں بہنوں کو دربار میں دیکھا ہے کھلے سر، کیا سہ گئے دل پر، ماں بہنوں کو دربار میں دیکھا ہے کھلے سر، کیا سہ گئے دل پر، مثل آپ کے صابر کوئی دنیا میں نہ گزرا، اے عابد مضطر، ایک شور قیامت کا مدینے میں ہے برپا، اے عابد مضطر، جب لے لیا چلو میں وضو کے لیے پانی، آنسو ہوئے جاری، جب لے لیا چلو میں وضو کے لیے پانی، آنسو ہوئے جاری، 40 برس روئے ہیں تم باپ کو آقا، اے عابد مضطر، ایک شور قیامت کا مدینے میں ہے برپا، اے عابد مضطر، دلوایا تمہیں زہر دغا اے شہ عالی، سازش تھی شقی کی، دلوایا تمہیں زہر دغا اے شہ عالی، سازش تھی شقی کی، دشمن جو تمہارا تھا ولید ستمارا، اے عابد مضطر، ایک شور قیامت کا مدینے میں ہے برپا، اے عابد مضطر، باخر نہ رہے چین سے سجادے دل افگار، تھے جینے سے بیزار، باخر نہ رہے چین سے سجادے دل افگار، تھے جینے سے بیزار، سب عمر مصیبت میں کٹی آپ کی آقا، اے عابد مضطر، ایک شور قیامت کا مدینے میں ہے برپا، اے عابد مضطر، ظالم نے تمہیں زہر سے مارا میرے مولا، اے عابد مضطر، یا حسین،
یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین. شام ہائے شام، شام ہائے شام، شام ہائے شام، شام